Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and pay our respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging. So welcome, distinguished guests, virtual and actual, to our debate, the debate that we had to have. I'm Nat Simmons, and I am going to be your moderator for today's verbal rumble in the jungle, coming to you live and unedited from the glorious halls of the venue in Alexandria. This debate matters. Not only are we questioning everything we think, know, feel and do because of COVID-19, but other very significant world events have been the catalyst for major reflection, personally, societally, and of course, in business. A growing tide of scepticism in many of our institutions means that we must change. Holding this debate is part of CI Events' commitment to build a movement within the events industry whose philosophy is, loosely, we are the outlook. What kind of events and experiential industry do we want to walk back into in the not too distant future? Following the debate, we will have further discussion on some of these points, and we'd like to hear from you. So please submit any questions through the comment section of your viewing platform. The topic today is nobody cares what your brand thinks. It makes perfect sense to have gathered these two incredible teams to address this statement from two, maybe even more angles. Who knows? Let's see what the debate brings. For the affirmative, we have CI Events' own Executive Creative Director, Ben Weir. With 20 years in film, television and events, he is no stranger to this topic and leads our creative teams here at CI Events. Rock and Roll Team Building General Manager Nicole White has spent 30 years in the events industry and who, with Kieran Gribben, has created transformative musical experiences for brands around the country and the world. And the indomitable Carolyn Miller, you may recognise her from regular stints on Gruen, her work as a strategist for many winning agencies. You may have also been lucky enough to see her speak, MC or run workshops at one of your events. And for the negative, we have Executive Creative Director of George P. Johnson, Bim Ricketson, an award-winning creative in film, TV and experiential. Jenny Vaughan, who has for the past 15 years been running Torch, a boutique brand and marketing consultancy. Torch partners with their blue chip clients to develop initiatives that ensure brands are optimised in the hearts and minds of their customers. And comedian, author and broadcaster Peter Berner, a titan of Australian arts, comedy and broadcast. So welcome to all of you. Now, the all-important rules. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, at which time I will ring my trusted bell. Speakers will then have 30 seconds to finish. And if you have not ceased speaking, there will be dire consequences. A vote will be removed for every 5 seconds of overtime. You have been warned. And I am very, very strict. So I will now ask the first speaker for the affirmative, Ben Weir, to please enlighten us with his take on nobody cares what your brand thinks.
Thanks for that kind introduction, Natalie. It's an honour to take the stage with my fellow speakers here, Nicole, Jenny, Carolyn, and my big bald brothers. May the best team win. And that would be us, the affirmative, because nobody cares what your brand thinks. We will prove beyond any reasonable doubt, dear audience, that if it was even slightly possible for a brand to have thoughts, which it isn't, no one would care. If there's one thing you take from our flawlessly presented, undeniably convincing case, it's that brands don't think. Marketers do. Brands don't think. Marketers do. And marketers, we know your brand is your baby, that you brought it into being, you gave it a name, you nurtured it, you saw its first steps, You had sleepless nights. There were teething problems, tantrums, countless milestones that only you care about. You're invested. You're invested. It might even feel like an actual baby. It's only human to think of things in this way, and to think of your brand in this way, that's fine. But it's fraught with peril, because what that means is that it clouds your judgment of how we feel about your brand. Brand baby, who knows? But for us, it is a brand. It's not human. It's not a baby. It matters to us, though. Let's be clear on that. Brands do matter. But just to continue this ridiculous baby analogy, if your brand makes too much noise, we're going to hand it back and we're going to go home. If it wrecks the joint, you're going to have to clean up after it. If it behaves like a proper menace in the playground, that's on you. That's your parenting. Just like a baby, behaviors matter for brands. Actions count. In the words of the great Leonard Albert Kravitz, my mama said it's good to be fruitful. My mama said, don't take more than a mouthful. My mama said it's good to be natural. My mama said it's good to be factual. Was he talking about brand? Probably not. But in order to light the way forward in these dark times for brands, for marketers, for people, for the children, Mr. Kravitz's words strike to the heart of the matter. And here's the tip. Marketers have to read the room right now in 2020. They have to read the room, they have to be brave in their thinking so that brand behaviors are fruitful. Read, make a positive difference. That they don't take more than a mouthful. Read, sustainability. Are natural, authentic, are factual, honest, transparent. Brand is important. Thank you for that. Brand is important, but it's delivered through behaviors and actions. It's the marketers who are the stewards. You make the decisions that affect the behaviors. You're the ones doing the thinking. As employees of brands, as consumers of brands, it matters what we think. We have opinions. We crave transparency. We want to trust. We always had for tens of thousands of years. And we have the means to see through the smoke screen simply by bearing witness to how your brand behaves, not how it thinks. Thank you very much. Jim, they're all yours, mate.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Nat, for inviting me here and for organising this. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ben, for your argument as well. But I don't know, in this day and age, do we really want to believe the opinions of a balding, middle-aged dude that works in events, right? I mean, is his opinion even valid anymore? Nicole from Rock and Roll Team Building, nice to meet you too. Interesting name, business name that you've got there, considering rock and roll is, you know, a prime example of cultural appropriation. So look forward to your argument on this topic. Hello, Caroline Miller. Nice to meet you too in person. Caroline proudly launched Nespresso in Australia, which is well done. Congratulations. You got George Clooney's pretty face filling our screens while you know, the coffee pods filled all the landfill. So again, congratulations to all of you on that. So you can see here that we've got three people here whose actions don't follow their words or their thoughts, whereas my team is blessed with a couple of righteous saints who back up their words with their actions, and you've got me as well. Jenny Vaughan has been working with brands for at least 20 years, and she will cancel your arguments like a Chris Lilly blackface sketch. Professor Peter Berner, you would know from the esteemed Pons Institute. He's going to be presenting his white paper on the subject, very rationally, very methodically. No jokes in that one. Very powerful and moving, you'll find from him. Ben, you kind of got yourself into a semantic tangle between what brands think or their actions, what they do, what they say. I don't know, something about a baby. But you kind of ended up arguing our side, which I appreciate, because I think you know as well as we do that people do care about what brands say, do, and think. I mean, if they didn't care, would they burn their sneakers when that Nike ad came out supporting Colin Kaepernick? Well, some of them burnt them, and then some of them went out and bought lots of them. And would the CEO of F45 had to resign and sell his business if he hadn't put out some racist comments recently? And also, F45 is a cult, so if you're in F45, I suggest you get out as soon as possible. I work for a global experience marketing brand, George P. Johnson, and I'm very proud of everything that we think, say, and do. This overnight and all this week, we're hosting a virtual forum on Pride. We last year raised over $1 million for charities. And we're leaders in sustainability in events. So these are things that I think everyone here and at home do care about, and beyond us just being obviously the #1 event agency in the world. Because right now, there's a lot going on. You've got COVID, Black Lives Matter. You've got that F45 cult. But we can do even more. And I think it'd be great if everyone here could send in questions or suggestions of how we as an industry could be doing better, because I think we as brands do believe that we can make the world a better place. But I look forward to you countering that argument. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to our opening speakers, and I feel like I must reflect and ad-lib here, but without, of course, influencing the audience's opinion. And Ben, thank you for the parenting lesson. Very valuable, I feel. Bim, thank you for pointing out the beautiful men's hairstyles on this stage. Peter, you are not exempt there, obviously, so thank you. But I think some very interesting first speaker kind of topics that have been raised there, so I'm interested to see what our second speakers will bring up next. Voting will go live after the closing arguments of the debate. So if you are viewing through our streaming platform, please look at the poll tab and cast your vote. For anything else, type affirmative or negative in the comments section. So now I will ask the second speakers to present their arguments, and to kick off for the affirmative team, General Manager for Rock and Roll Team Building, Nicole White.
Thanks, Nat. I just have to say though, Bim, really, are you in a position to make a crack about bald middle-aged men? Not so much. And I want to thank you for actually supporting our argument through your examples of Nike and F45. Very complimentary to what we're about to say. So I'm here to talk to you about behaviour and what it means. Well, according to the dictionary, it's the way in which one acts and conducts oneself, especially towards others. And I'm going to give you 2 examples of behaviour, both linked to a product that's been a very much discussion during COVID-19, and that's toilet paper. When Australia went into a toilet paper buying frenzy in early March and the shelves were starting to empty, we witnessed women fighting like wild boars in the supermarket shelves over a pack of rolls. All they cared about was stockpiling loo roll to protect themselves from a respiratory virus that had absolutely nothing to do with your bum. And I would say that that's a really bad example of bad behaviour, a good example of bad behaviour. But on the flip side of bad behaviour relating to toilet paper is a brand called Who Gives a Crap. This is a brand that represents something that everyone cares about in the world today, and they deliver through positive behaviours, not thought. They are gung-ho about contributing to society in a responsible, positive and sustainable way. They've proved that toilet paper is more than just about wiping bums. And by giving 50% of their profits to build toilets to communities in need, they've raised over $2.5 million for charity and saved a lot of trees, water and energy in the process. Who Gives a Crap is an example of a brand that everybody cares about. People want to associate with ethical and focused brands that are transparent and have high integrity and are downright committed to the common good. We want brands that care about their impact the business has on the world, and we want brands that focus not only on making financial profit, but are strong and have the power to create change and make significant impacts on society. Brand authenticity has never been more crucial, and increasingly everyone's thinking about authenticity. Patagonia is another great example. They say they're in the business of saving our home planet, and their core values are around on building the best product, causing no unnecessary harm, using business to protect nature, and not being bound by convention. And by that, I mean they thrive on developing new ways to do things. On the day of the US presidential election in 2016, Patagonia closed all of their stores across the United States to make sure that anyone who would rather go and compare fleeces had no excuse not to go out and vote for a new president. As Coco Chanel once said, hard times arouse an instinctive desire for authenticity. And I think we'd all agree we're in hard times now, and we're in times where we need change to save our environment and to address the major issues in society. More than ever, people want brands to associate and be aligned with something that makes a genuine difference. People are awake to marketing manipulation, and they're awake to discrepancies between what a company says and what a company does. These examples all show that a lot of thought goes into brands, but it's not the brands that do the thinking. Over to you, Jenny.
Thank you. I think this debate at the moment is falling down to one thing, whether people think about what your brand does via how people understand what your brand does. And they are arguing that your brand can only do things, and we are arguing that by doing things, it makes people think something about your brand. You cannot think something about a brand without doing it, and that is the nub of our argument. And I think you've given us some great examples, Nicole, that I can build on. But those are examples of brands that have done things, and therefore people think things about the brand as a result of that. So we proudly say that people do care about what people think, and it's a result of those activities. And I reckon, unlike Bim, I'm very clear on my judgment, and I think that now more than ever we have lost faith and we have lost trust in so many things as a society. We've lost trust in our elected leaders, we've lost trust in the police, we've lost trust in the banks, the church, the media, or maybe that was misplaced in the first place. But anyway, we've lost trust in the basic sort of foundations of society. And, pushing aside the COVID pandemic that's leaving us in various places at the moment, I think we're suffering from a more deadly disease, and we would say welcome to Antitrustville. A place where consumers need to take the world into their own hands and be guided by their beliefs, and the brands need to reflect that. We saw this clearly in Celeste Barr's Power to the People approach and in building her brand through the people. In Antitrustville, we believe that people absolutely care about what brands think. Why? Because brands carry the values, and those values are what are supposed to be timeless. And indeed, a great brand stays authentically true to its values, and those values consumers find to be aspirational and inspirational. And unlike institutions, our brands have got the smarts, and we as marketers have got the smarts to make those brands adaptable to the times that we're living and to relate to the people as they're living today. We saw this so clearly when the US gridiron player Colin Kaepernick took his famous knee, and on one hand that was a powerful motive against violence, but on the other hand it was a continued and fresh expression of Nike's core belief around self-determination. Just Do It is now not just an empowering slogan for the weekend warrior, but it's a calling card for those who aspire to change the status quo. 74% of people believe that brands should take a stance on issues, and Unilever have proven that their brands with purpose have grown 69% faster than their other brands. Today in Antitrustville, everybody believes what a brand thinks and little else. There's powerful evidence to support this theory. Procter & Gamble's Always Like a Campaign took a fresh spin on confidence, and their message went viral with over 90 million views. We've recently been working on Ben & Jerry's, a brand that's built its business upon sharing what it thinks about marriage equality, petitioning the community for climate change. And while their ice cream is bloody delicious, people's evangelical support of that brand is not based on what it is, but it's based on what it thinks. As for the gun debacle and the lack of action from the government in the US, we've seen brands like Gucci, Tom's and Levi's taking active stance and making a change on behalf of the people via their brands. So yes, people care, and brands better get their house in line and better get cleaned up and walk the walk, because the time has come for them to state their beliefs and align behind those beliefs, because people do care what they think.
The gloves are on, or off, on, whatever the saying is, sorry. It's been a long day already. Nicole, thank you for the Who Gives a Crap and Patagonia lesson, but I do think some really interesting brands, doing some amazing things there. So, and Jenny, I think this, by doing we think about the brand. Very interesting argument, and I do like that conversation about who can we really trust. So it's going to be interesting how this gets summarised up as we go into the final round. So before we do, for our viewers online, please don't forget we are taking questions, which the panel will answer at the end. So please fire away in the comments section, and we'll table it at the end of the debate. So now, for the final speakers and for the affirmative team, Director at the Honeycomb Effect, Carolyn Miller.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me along today. It's very funny to be talking about this subject as someone who's done so much advertising and marketing throughout my life, and yet I have never walked into my office on a Monday morning, had a brand sitting there and say to me, this new campaign, listen, I've had some thoughts. Brands don't think. There is no way a brand has ever had a thought. It's marketers and advertisers who do the thinking on our behalf. So we have never, in the affirmative, said that brands aren't important. The power of brand is absolutely massive. And you're right, it has the absolute trust and power to change the world. It's fantastic. But it's human beings, it's people behind the brands who have those thoughts and who either make them or break them through their behaviours on the ground. So we believe that your brand doesn't have thoughts. It doesn't have, when McDonald's says, I'm loving it, McDonald's doesn't actually think anything. That's something it's trying to imbibe over to its consumers. Your brand is not a sentient being. Your brand is a baby perhaps in your mind, but it doesn't actually exist to develop itself. It's something that requires smart people and alert, and consumers also define your brand too. We can say as much as we want about what we believe our brand is, but it's actually the consumer who ultimately decides what it stands for. I'd also like to just bring up this idea about nobody cares what your brand thinks. We are so overwhelmed with thoughts, thanks to social media at the moment, I'm starting to not care what actual people think at this point. So, there is a context where we have people want to associate themselves with certain brands because it fits their image of who they are as a person. And I think one of the most interesting examples of this would be with the Cristal champagne over in the US. The hip-hop community embraced it, had it in their videos, they were chugging it, it was through all the clubs. Then the idiot CEO says in The Economist that he really doesn't care about bling culture and that maybe these people would like to go and buy some Dom Perignon instead. That is a massive thing to do against your main audience. And you know what? The hip-hop community completely dropped the consumption of the product, but the brand didn't change. The brand was still exclusive, the brand still stood for success, the brand was still hyper-premium, was still out of the reach of ordinary people. The brand didn't change one iota. But what happened was the people behind the brand really made an impact over what it actually meant. Consumers also don't notice anything unless it's really relevant for them. There's an old adage that you never notice mattress advertising until you need to buy a mattress, and then you see mattress advertising everywhere. So there's a whole load of people who are completely ignoring all of your messaging anyway, and it's only for relevant consumers that you can actually even get messages across. But messages are developed and imbibed and created by marketers and advertisers and brand guardians. The genius behind the people who make great brands isn't the brand themselves. And human beings can make the distinction between who is the strategy or who is the person behind the brand and what the brand stands for itself. So, we have heard about people care about authenticity from both sides. In fact, both arguments have been great to say how powerful brand can be. But we have argued the entire way through that brands don't think. Brands are ultimately the behaviours that they live by, and the consumer decides what that actually means for them. So, without further ado, I invite Peter to come and smash us with some comedy at the other side. But we don't believe brands think, humans do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Look, I enjoyed that cluster of thinking about babies and Lenny Kravitz and toilet paper, puffy jackets, and the fact that we don't think too much. But obviously, nobody cares what brands think when it comes to subjects like, did Van Halen do the right thing to replace David Lee Roth with Sammy Hagar? But it is the important things that they really care about. Do we care that a global manufacturer of plumbing supplies or a small wheel balancer in Taree cares about social injustice? Of course we do. Should it bother you if your tyres have been rebalanced by a racist? If your car pulls to the right? Obviously. Everybody cares what brands think. We saw COVID-19 cause the great run on toilet paper, and it was interesting to see the thin veneer of humanity get peeled away when people's assholes were in peril. We saw the riots in the US turn to looting, and looting has its benefits. It gets customers back into bricks and mortar retail, which I think is important. It's great market research. If your product is still on the shelves after the looting is finished, then maybe you have to rethink your product. The person I feel sorry for is the poor bloke that spent $500 on Jordanaires the day before the looting happened. Of course we think very much about what brands think. I'm a brand. You're a brand. Everybody is a brand nowadays. People wear clothing with brand names across the front of them. We must believe that they believe in what we believe in, which is social justice, diversity, and extended warranty. But it's no good just thinking good deeds. You have to do good deeds. If your company is on the wrong side of the woke culture, beware, because bad press biodegrades slower than a Kardashian. You can't be the CEO of a tuna fish company and come out publicly and say, we love dolphins. Our logo is a dolphin. My husband and I named our first daughter Flipper. You can't be then driving around with dolphins tied up in the boot of your car because you're part of some underground dolphin fighting ring. You must have actions that equal to what you believe. It's all very well for a tech giant to say, we are wonderful people, we donate to hospitals. Well, of course, some would argue maybe if you paid your taxes, we could all buy the hospitals ourselves. Brands and consumers have to be in alliance because activists are on the warpath. If you're a baker, you better be ashamed of the white bread you bake. If you own a white goods company, you better not. No one is safe. Wait until the activists turn their attention to that hotbed of deceit and treachery that is the renewable energy movement. See, the batteries that we use take cobalt, and the cobalt is mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the 12-year-olds that mined that Democratic Republic of Congo, that beacon of human rights and wage parity. See, we need to be paying $25,000 for our mobile phones, and I know everybody listening to me is going, right on, Pete! We want to pay 25 grand so everyone gets a fair deal. And we don't only care about what brands think, brands care about what we think, which is why they collect the data, which is why they love the data. When you go to the supermarket and you buy everything and put it on your credit card, they love that because they can learn everything about you. They can crunch all the data to sell you back to you, which is why once a week I go to the supermarket and buy a pineapple and a can of WD-40. Work out. That's because I'm an old white man and I don't trust anything. Thank you. Something like that.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Peter, Carolyn. Brands don't think, people do. interesting to see what people have to say about that. And Peter, I'd love to see your shopping trolley. What's with the pineapple and the WD-40? I mean, but thank you both very, very much. Now, thank you to all of our debaters. And as I mentioned, our voting lines are open. So please choose very, very wisely, because the prize is a big prize. I will reveal all shortly, but just vote sensibly, people. Events such as these don't happen without the involvement of some key supporters from the industry that we know and love. And I'd really like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the venue Alexandria, where we find ourselves today. As always, NW Group, who have provided the AV, tech and wonderful crew. Decor of Distinction for the beautiful furnishings, and thank you to ICMI Speakers Bureau for connecting us with both Peter and with Carolyn. And the CI Events Digital and Design team for their hard work getting the message for this event out to the community. So to give us some time for the votes to come in and be tallied, it's time for a little musical interlude. So please welcome Grammy-nominated songwriter and former singer of In Excess, Kieran Gribben, performing his original track, Let's Change the World. So please give it up for Kieran.
Let's change the world where we could make a difference if we try. Imagine how the world could look with everyone on side. You see it happening on the streets, the cities and the times. You find possibilities, a fresh and moving sun. Change the world, I want to change the world. We want to change the world, starting from now. Joy of standing for the truth awakens in our mind. Future rests so easily on the shoulders of mankind. I want to change the world. We want to change the world. We've got to change the world, starting from now. A new and different world, a pure and gentle world, a simply better world. Follow the sun. Getting better now, just start believing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kieran. Always an absolute superstar. So thank you for joining us today, and also to Rock and Roll Team Building. So we've had some questions. I'm going to take my seat. And please, if you've got any more questions, just keep pushing them through. But the first question is for you, Carolyn. So why are some brands, or as Carolyn says, the people behind the brands, so good at making people feel something while others are not? Does it come down to your brand values aligning sweetly with the zeitgeist, or is there some other magic formula? Oh my God, that was such a mouthful.
When we talk about the brands that have had the strongest power, I think that consistency is without question the biggest thing that comes through with them. So certainly, having a room full of people and post-it notes and coming up with your brand values and not changing those too frequently is very, very important. But also the brands that really are powerful and emotive are the ones that take risks. And I think it's really interesting, and if I'd had more time, I would have loved to have talked about this up there. The Nike example where they used Colin Kaepernick last year, that was a hugely courageous ad, but that was done by a marketer with some balls, because he basically saw the concept for that from the agency and he didn't show his board. So he took that knowing how high risk that would be to be polarising against such a massive part of the population, and he did it anyway. He put his job on the line, he put his reputation on the line, and he said, I'm going to do this because I believe in it and I think it works. And furthermore, it completely reinvigorated Nike's street cred and their position also as a streetwear brand, and they did amazing things for them, because it's possible that their brand was declining a bit in terms of actually having the same hip and funkiness as a lot of the new stuff coming through. So having someone who owns the brand with real vision, who is courageous, but who understands the nuance of what the brand means is why some are so effective and others aren't.
Yeah, thank you. And Jenny, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add to that at all?
Yeah, the only thing, I agree with what Caroline's saying. The only thing I would add to that is I think that finding a message that is relevant to people, it's important to keep your brand values consistent, but it is also important to find a way to communicate those values in a way that's relevant to people, because times are changing, and times are changing now more than ever, and so you need to make that you cannot be running the same messages the same way you've done in the past. You need to change the way that you talk to people, and you need to change the way you interact with them, and through the type of things you do, through social media, through the actions that you take, through the way you structure your board, through the way you employ diversity within your employee base. But I think you've just got to change, not stay and do things the same way that you've done, adapt to the changing conditions while keeping your brand message consistent.
And that probably leads into an interesting question that just came through. Does people caring what your brand thinks really only depend on how good a storyteller your brand is, assuming your brand is a good product or service? And I might actually just throw that to you, Bim. You obviously build experiential experiences like we do. What do you think?
Yeah, coming from the creative perspective, I think the storytelling part is, how you build those great connections, because you could be the guy in the tyre shop who isn't focusing on his message out there, but if he wants to, he could work out what his message is and how to get it out to people, and add in that special magic that's actually going to connect to people. So Mr. Tie Man might be fabulous, but unless people know about it, then, unless it's being communicated in a really effective way, then it's kind of going nowhere. So super important, the storytelling aspect. Mm-hmm. And as you said, we are, we're in a marketing business that our channels happen to mainly be in the live space. So our storytelling is not necessarily a 90-second ad, although it might be a beautiful piece of video that appears at a live event.
Yeah. Phil has asked, would you really tell people, or would you really tell your customers that no one cares what their brand thinks? Peter?
Would you really tell someone that
Your
no one cares?
customers that?
I think you'd be very brave to say that
Yes.
no one cares what your brand thinks. Look, I think what we're hearing this afternoon is that in this the great upheaval that's happening now, and the big shifts that are changing in the way that we as consumers relate to the brands that we engage with every day, I think it would be a foolish person to suggest that we don't care what our brand thinks, and therefore it matters not to our consumer. But I think that's absolutely, the consumers demand that dialogue, because you're handing over your good hard folding. You want to know that there's a connection. There's too much choice out there. If there was only one bread maker and one computer maker and one car maker, you would have no choice. But there aren't. There are many to choose from. So the ball's in our court. We have the luxury of choice.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question, do different generations or demographics impose a higher level of expectation on a brand's position, behaviour or express values? I might just voice one opinion here if I could. It is estimated that 75% of the purchasing demographic and the working demographic by 2025 is going to be in the millennial, what is referred to as a millennial demographics. And they do have a voice, and I wish I could say I was still in that bracket. I'm not. But they do have a voice, and they do put their money where their voice is. And, I think, and for us as a brand in CI Events, we do believe that we have to follow through with what we say, and that we do have to be responsible citizens, and we do have to really provide transparency, because I think, as you said, Peter, the world is demanding it, and as we should, as they should, we have to be responsible global citizens. Might also, Nicole, I don't know if you have any opinion on that. Obviously, you're in an environment that's...
No, I agree. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, look what they just did in the US with the Trump rally, was the millennials gathered and blocked all those seats through TikTok and K-pop or whatever they did. I'm not up to it because I'm the same as you.
I've never TikToked.
But, I agree. I think that they are, and they do care. They want to have authenticity, and they want to know that what the brand they're associating with actually is not going to damage the environment. And it is, when I said about the greater good, I really genuinely mean that, because it's just so important.
The other thing we're seeing on that is this millennial phenomenon of the hashtag cancel culture, where they you come out and say anything that they think is transphobic or, anti-racist, and they will boycott your product, and they will put it all over social media. And we've had, they're controversial. I couldn't quite understand it, but J.K. Rowling appears to have come out with some transphobic comments this week. I read the comments. I thought they were perfectly reasonable to me. But anyway, apparently the millennials didn't, and that's resulted in huge amounts of social media against her and against her books. And the same thing with that Too Faced makeup brand, where their kid came out and said he was trans, and then I think it was a sister of the owner said, well, what else has he been lying to us about? And now that brand's boycotted as well. So I think they really are taking very strong action against brands they don't agree with.
Peter?
My only observation about that is that I would counsel the millennials to move slowly and don't let your generation be hijacked by the shrill and often the ill-informed. There will be mistakes made along the way. You will cancel the wrong people along the way. Be mindful, as an old bloke that's been around a while and seen this before. Just tread carefully, and there will be moments where you will find yourself in direct contradiction with your beliefs by supporting, like going to the protests, wearing the expensive shoes that were made by virtual slave labour, or the telephone device that's made by people on 6 cents an hour. You have to reconcile all that before you start stamping your foot and demanding purity and Galahad-like, piety, because it's a it's a confusing and vexed and complex place out there. It's not as simple as being black and white, to use an expression.
Yeah, and I think there is that. Sorry, Ben, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, I agree with you. I think it's never been more important for everyone to check their sources, because your judgment is the only thing you've got. And if you've just gone, oh, there's a blog that said something that I connect with, that must be true because it rhymes or whatever, and it's not. You've got to check your sources. I've done it with friends recently, presenting very bold, convincing arguments that are totally flawed because they've got their information from a false source, dubious sources.
Yes, Carolyn. Of course.
In as well. Just that original question, though, about whether there's a difference between the generations. And this is something that I think, as I'm getting older, certainly, I'm definitely noticing the difference in the boomers plus generation, who were easy to target. They only had TV, and newspapers, and it was really easy to get them all on board with a brand. And every new generation wants to reject the things that the previous generation liked and went for. So I think one of the biggest challenges brands have now is reinvention for the existing brands who have, not necessarily appealed to a younger audience, but to also consider that millennials, in a large case now, are over 30 with kids and mortgages. And actually, there's the other generations coming through who have been completely digitally native, who are looking for small, bespoke, personalised. I remember hearing once from the production manager, the global production manager of Nestle, saying one of our biggest liabilities is mass manufacturing. When you hear that, that is a complete shift in how products are made and how brands will be marketed. So it's fascinating. It's an exciting time to be alive, if not slightly terrifying this year.
It is, and I agree with you, I think, Peter, as well, that it will take a number of generations and there will be mistakes along the way. So it'll be interesting to see how we navigate this next phase, not as individuals, as corporates, and as human beings who all share this planet together. I'm going to, just one more question, if I could. So what happens when the brand is a person? For example, Pete Evans is a brand and people care what he thinks, good or bad. Does this change the dynamic of this debate?
I was actually going to bring this up, sorry. I realise it didn't direct this at me necessarily, I'm jumping in. There is a difference between celebrity persona and the person behind it. So your brand as a celebrity is going to actually be quite different to the thoughts that you put into that celebrity brand. So I don't know Pete Evans, I've never met him, I have no desire to meet him, but he is certainly creating his brand and he's making a lot of these statements, but he's also doing that as a celebrity. So I do think that the Pete that you might see as a private person may not necessarily come off quite as crazy as his brand does. I don't know that, though. I could be wrong. But there is a distinction. Even all us as brands, as people, who we present ourselves as professionally, is probably going to be very different to who we are in our trackies on a Saturday night. We present what we want the world to see, and those thoughts are done by us as a person inside, not the brand that we actually present.
I think someone like Pete, though, if he's doing something which is objectively dangerous, telling people to go on crazy diets or telling people that vaccines don't work, it's kind of a different thing with hey, buy this new thing. It's a whole other realm where it's like, I can shut down a company that says that, but how do I shut down a celebrity for saying not just crazy things, but dangerous things? That's a whole other kind of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
We continue to employ very loud, controversial mouths in our media that say irresponsible things and incite riots in southern suburbs of Sydney. And I find that I've thought about this too, that whether it's an individual or a company, there is a responsibility to do what is deemed to be the right thing. Again, check your sources, decide what the right thing is, and do that.
It's called shtick. It is. You've worked out that, if I wanted to, a few years ago, I would have thought, there's a gap in the market for a right-wing comedian. I might be as left as all get out at home, but that's the shtick I'm going to use to peddle to make the money. And I suspect there's a lot of people out there in this world of influencers and immediate celebrity and cash returns who can play a game for the public. Problem is, people are going to see you in the street and have a go at you and you go, no, that's my character. But if the character is the same name as you, you've got problems. You know?
Sorry, the questions keep coming, so I'm just going to do a couple more if I could. Ben, do you think that there's a lack of understanding of social media within event agencies?
A lack of understanding of social media
within event agencies?
Within event agencies? I don't think so. I think we know it's there. I wonder if some events make the best use of them, though, in order to amplify that 1 day or 3 days or that week. So that if that event would be, it would benefit the brand, it benefit the company and the products and services to amplify that event where 2,000 people have attended, then you must recognise the power of social media and the right platforms. Again, it does come down to the strategic intent of what that event was. But if you want to get out there, then you absolutely have to recognise that social media has a really important role to play.
Yeah. Bim, do you have any opinion?
Look, when a 14-year-old kid can get 1 million followers by putting Mentos in Pepsi, and we're cheering if we get 5 more followers in a week, yes, we don't understand it as well as
we should.
We definitely need to make more Mentos and Coke videos or something. I don't know.
All right. So I'll probably just go down the line, if I could, and ask all of you as a final question. What should brands do to stay relevant in the current climate? So if there was one piece of advice, what would it be, Carolyn?
Mine would be pick a lane. And I think that many brands, they know who their consumer is, but so many of them try and do, well, this is our main consumer, this is our second consumer. They kind of layer it up so that their messaging gets distilled. And I really think that you have to be willing to draw a line in the sand and say, no, we don't care that we're going to piss off a lot of people by doing this, or that it doesn't appeal to that particular demographic. That's what we stand for.
Thank you. Nicole?
I would say authenticity. I just think that they've got to be honest about what they're doing and because people do see through it. And I think now more than ever with all the media, and do we know what is true, what is not true? I mean, the world's just changing day by day, but I just think brands that are authentic and genuine and really do good for society, I think that's what is needed.
Ben?
Empathy of the context in which I inhabit. I don't want to be mined for data, I want to be understood. And I think there's a big difference there, and I think some brands have a lot of work to do in that area.
Thank you. Bim?
Look, we've done a bunch of work with a bunch of companies and on ourselves on our brand purpose. Like, what's the point of your business if you didn't need to make money? And so we're super clear as a business on what our purpose is. And then we can say things and do things and think things that remains, true to us. And if it isn't true to us, then it isn't right for us. So I think that's if you know who you are, then you're only going to do what's right for you, right for you and hopefully for the world as well.
Thank you. Jenny?
I think it's important to evolve and change. I was at a talk and I heard, and the guy from Hilton got up and said, we are opening, and this is obviously a while ago, pre-pandemic, but he said, we are opening 3,000 new hotels in the next 24 months. And the guy from Airbnb said, we'll be doing that in the next 15 minutes. It's just like, I do think you need to change. I think you need to evolve. I think brands need to embrace the digital world much more proactively and confidently than what they've been doing.
Thank you. Peter?
Validate parking. I reckon if brands offered to validate parking, I'd buy it. That's just selfish, though. That's because I live in Sydney and parking's a bitch, but
That's your final answer?
That's it.
Thank you for that. Okay.
It's a winner.
Well, I do have the results. The votes are in. You, the audience, have spoken. And the winner of this very prestigious award and these beautiful, very strange-looking trophies. They're stunning, don't you think? And the team who can brag now around the water cooler for at least the next few days. I'm not sure if that's even okay in COVID world for the water cooler. However, the affirmative team, congratulations. So I will get Ben as the team captain to come and congratulations.
Thanks, that's great. Thank you. We all get one. Yes, we all get one.
So congratulations, team. You all get a trophy. Don't worry, Nicole. Don't worry, Caroline. You're getting one as well. But really, I wanted to say thank you to all of our speakers again. Caroline, Jenny, Nicole, Bim, Peter, Ben, and of course to all of our sponsors. Thank you once again. NW Group, the Venue Alexandria, Decor of Distinction, ICMI and Rock and Roll Team Building. Thank you to our audience, both in person and online. Thank you for joining us. And of course, thank you to the CI Events crew who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make this happen and get it all flowing nicely. So thank you so, so much. And if you like what you saw, please follow CI Events on either LinkedIn, Instagram or Facebook. And of course, stay tuned for more of the same. And please remember, we are the outlook. We are the future success of our brands and the industry. So, bye for now, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.
You don't wanna live life that way. You don't wanna be angry. You don't mean all those things you say. So just let it go. So get on your way and don't be afraid. Once you taste, you won't waste your life. Come on, now leave it. Life is there to enjoy. Don't let it pass you by. Life is short, so don't waste it. Enjoy yourself. Ain't no sense in worrying. Ain't no use in crying. Never too late, never too late.